When I was a kid, my mom bought me a DVD with a Spider-Man cartoon at my grandma's house. It was so long ago that I don't even remember exactly when or how it happened. It just feels like this cartoon has been with me since the day I was born. And of course, I'm talking about Spider-Man the Animated Series from 1994, a show that Marvel subsequently decided to revisit not so long ago in the continuation of the X-Men animated series, which, by the way, turned out to be pretty good. It even got renewed for several more seasons. But anyway, today we're talking about our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. No, not that one. Let me explain. I probably first watched the series when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I didn't understand most of the drama, the inner conflicts, or the emotional weight behind the story back then. But I loved it so much that I rewatched it countless times at different points in my life, and every time it felt different. When I was a little, I saw nothing but the action. When I became a teenager, I started paying attention to the love stories and the big rewards for the hero struggles. You know what I mean, rewards. And as I grew older, I began to truly see the drama, the inner turmoil and personal pain of Peter Parker that I completely missed as a kid. For those who never seen it, I describe Spider-Man to us as an action-adventure sci-fi show with deep storytelling. It had wild inventions, futuristic police blasters, added because of censorship, and Spider-Man himself using various high-tech gadgets of his own design. Now, a bit of history. In 1993, after the massive success of X-Men animated series, Fox Kids began exploring the idea of similar animated adaptation of Spider-Man. In 1994, they teamed up with newly formed Marvel Films Animation to bring series to life. But putting the production team together wasn't easy. The late Martin Pasco, who had won an Emmy for his work on Batman animated series, was chosen as the first showrunner. Unfortunately, conflicts arose between him and other parts of the production, and Marvel had to replace him quickly. Months later, John Semper Jr. received a call from Stan Lee himself. "We got a problem. Marty is not gonna work out." At that moment, John already had a contract with Puzzle Place, but being a lifelong Spider-Man fan made his decision difficult. Stay where he was, or take a leap of faith with Stan Lee's new project. As you can guess, he chose the second one. When John arrived at Marvel Films Animation, production truly began. He wanted to use Martin Pasco material, but due to legal restrictions, he wasn't allowed access to it. Pasco had planned to create a very faithful adaptation of the first 130 Spider-Man comic issues, so John had to start from absolute zero. The only thing he borrowed was the idea of hiring actual comic book writers for the show. He rewatched the 1967 Spider-Man series for inspiration, as well as episodes from the Amazing Spider-Man live-action show. Interestingly, Peter's costume design was inspired by Nicholas Hammond's suit from 1977 series, and John even added a giant robot as a fun homage. Originally, the final fight in the pilot night of the Lizard was supposed to take place in Daily Bugle, but that was changed at the last moment. On November 19, 1994, the show premiered on Fox Kids, and it blew up. The first season broke records, instantly becoming a hit so big that Fox considered it extending the show from 65 to 100 episodes. Unfortunately, that never happened. This Spider-Man was full of contradictions, a perfect balance between superhero life and ordinary human struggles, monsters who were still human side and painful losses of loved ones. Sometimes the show went too far for its time. I still remember the Vulture episode, where Peter rapidly aged. That realization of aging terrified me so much as a kid that I started asking my mom about it. Telling her how scared I was that it would happen to me too. Yeah, that was definitely a bit too much. She even banned me from watching the cartoon for a while, at least until I found a way to sneak it back on. I've seen many Spider-Man cartoon signs, but none of them captured the same level of emotional depth. The action here wasn't just fan service, it served a purpose, to show Peter Parker as a real person. After all, the word man in Spider-Man is there for a reason. The show perfectly embodied the 19s, with its dark tone, long story arcs, and then new comic storylines like Venom and Carnage. I dare say this show laid the foundation for Spider-Man's animated adaptations and gave him his first big popularity outside of comics. Later shows would treat drama as a standard, but back then it was something new. Speaking of innovations, you'll probably use the current multiverse house in Marvel, where characters from different realities meet for fan service and box office glory. Well, this multiverse trend started with this very show. In it, Spider-Man meets his alternate versions from other realities. My young mind just was exploded. Other Spideys fighting together, who's the strongest? In the end, Madame Web sends them to a ruined universe to stop an evil Parker clone from destroying the multiverse. Eventually, realizing that brute force won't work, Spider-Man makes a brilliant move. He brings Uncle Ben from a universe where he's still alive to talk sense into the evil Spider-Man. The evil one, possessed by Carnage and unable to rid himself of the symbiote, takes one last desperate step and vanishes in the unknown to avoid harming anyone else. At the end of this arc, Spider-Man visits a universe where he never existed as a hero and meets his real creator, Stan Lee. Stan said he had checked every storyboard, every model sheet, every script, everything to ensure the show stayed true to the spirit of the comics. John Semper Jr., the show's producer, truly believed it was one of the best Spider-Man series ever. There are so many story arcs worth mentioning, but I highlight the most memorable. Morbius, not the one from the movie. This Morbius is Dr. Michael Morbius, who gains powers after failed experiment involving a gene converter and a bat. His skin turns grey, eyes go red, and he gains the power of flight. What made this arc memorable to me was its darkness and inevitability. It genuinely scared me as a kid. Spider-Man's things are mutation, his transformation into a full spider monster, Blade hunt for vampires including Spider-Man, and Morbius draining plasma from people. Yes, plasma, not blood, because of censorship. In fact, censorship was a huge issue throughout the show. Spider-Man wasn't allowed to throw real punches, he had to use gadgets or web tricks. Guns were replaced with sci-fi blasters. There was even a debate over whether Spider-Man could accidentally hit figures while swinging between buildings. And yet, despite all that censorship, the show still managed to deliver some truly dark, even haunting moments. The Black Suit arc especially stuck with me. Watching my favorite hero slowly turning into a literal monster, losing control, almost killing his enemies, only to stop himself at the last second, was unforgettable. Venom, as his opposite, was the perfect antagonist born from hatred and bonded with the same symbiote. In the end, Peter outsmarts Venom and launches him into a space, to the moon, where Venom faces ominously Reapers, teasing his return. Of course, the series wasn't all darkness, it had its shares of memes too. The Shocker scream, Venom riding a truck, even a fun Easter egg referencing Joe Perry from Aerosmith, the guy who played the legendary guitar riff in the intro. Speaking of which, the music. That iconic theme song still lives rent-free in my head after all these years. It might not be the Hans Zimmer level, but it does exactly what it needs to. I might even use it in my future Spider-Man videos, so make sure to subscribe, or you'll miss that nostalgic masterpiece. Now let's talk about a few key characters. Uncle Ben appears mostly in Peter memories, symbolizing his moral compass and inner strength. Aunt May, the embodiment of love and care, always worried for Peter's safety while he tries to protect her from his dangerous second life. Mary Jane, unforgettable, not just because Spider-Man became a worldwide icon, but because of that one scene, when Peter loses her clone and screams her name in pure pain. It gave me chills as a kid. Mary Jane is the classic comic archetype. Witty, confident, hates being ignored. At one point she even marries Peter, only for us to find out later it was a clone. Still, that ending where Peter travels through space and time to find her is deeply romantic and truly heroic. So, to sum up, this show left an immense mark on me, and on millions of other kids who watched it wide-eyed as their favorite hero in red and blue saved the world, and saved himself. I know Marvel had its ups and downs, but the new X-Men series give me hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll one day bring back the Spider-Man 2. Little spoiler, it turns out they already did it. Lol. Maybe for some, it's just an old weird cartoon, but for me, it's something sacred, a relic from my childhood that I return to whenever I want to feel that time again, when the grass was greener and cartoons feel honest and alive. Big thanks for watching, see you next time.